was absolutely terrified, but my favorite thing to do is to sneak into the theaters.
There is, every villain deserves compassion, no matter how dark and sometimes, evil they are. There's a reason to that beginning.
A killer robot with a viral dance, a $12 million budget, and $181 million at the box office. M3GAN wasn't just a movie, she was a pop culture explosion. So when a sequel arrived 2 years later, with a bigger budget, a bolder idea, and the same team behind the camera, how did it crash to just 39 million worldwide? Something went very, very wrong. And it's more interesting than you'd think. Before I talk about what broke, we need to understand what was built. The first M3GAN arrived in January 2023, and right away it was already playing against itself. January is Hollywood's graveyard slot. The holiday blockbusters have already made their money, studios dump the films they don't believe in, nobody expects a January release to do anything remarkable. M3GAN didn't get the memo. The Blumhouse production, made for just $12 million, opened to $30.4 million domestically in its very first weekend. That's the biggest opening weekend for a PG-13 horror film since A Quiet Place. By the time it left theaters, it had grossed $181 million worldwide. But the numbers only tell part of the story. That dance. You already know the one. M3GAN, droppy and uncanny, sashaying down a hallway with dead-eye precision. The clip hit TikTok before the movie even released. The hashtags #M3GAN, #M3GAN Dance, #M3GAN Movie combined for over 1.3 billion views. That number isn't a typo. Universal's marketing team sent M3GAN dancers to the Empire State Building, to the Tonight Show, to subway platforms across New York. Nobody had to engineer it. It exploded organically. And organic attention is the one thing money genuinely cannot buy. But there was something else happening beneath the surface too. Producer Jason Blum said M3GAN caught audiences at exactly the right psychological moment. The world was crawling out of COVID. People were hungry for something fun, something campy and clever that didn't take itself too seriously. M3GAN poked at tech culture, at helicopter parenting, at our uncomfortable relationship with artificial intelligence. And it did all of it while being genuinely, wickedly entertaining. The film landed a 93% critic score on Rotten Tomatoes. Audiences gave it 78%. That's a movie that worked on every level it was trying to work on. The blueprint was there. The IP was proven. The creative team was returning. So what happened when they tried to build on it? M3GAN 2.0 is not a bad movie, and that's almost the most tragic part of this story. The sequel picks up 2 years later. M3GAN's creator, Gamma, played again by Alison Williams, has completely rebuilt her life. She's no longer building dangerous AI, she's writing books about it, testifying before Congress, advocating for responsible technology. Her niece, Katie, now 14 and rebellious, is living with her, and somewhere hidden inside their smart home, M3GAN is still alive, dormant but watching. The central threat is Amelia, a military-grade android played by Ivana Sakno. She was built by a defense contractor who stole M3GAN's underlying technology. But as Amelia's self-awareness grows, she starts making her own decisions, violent ones. And when she goes fully rogue, Gamma realizes there's only one entity capable of stopping her. Director Gerard Johnstone, who wrote the script himself this time, was clearly singing for something ambitious. The Terminator 2 comparison isn't accidental. The film mirrors that same franchise shift. Villain becomes hero, hero becomes action, intimacy expands into a spectacle. And there are moments where it lands. M3GAN's one-liners are sharper than ever. Jenna Davis's voice work is extraordinary. Synthetic sweetness layered over barely contained menace. Jermaine Clement is a scene sealer as a sleazy Silicon Valley billionaire, turning tech exposition into something resembling stand-up comedy. A car chase through Northern California genuinely elevates the film beyond a standard Blumhouse thriller. Critics who liked it called it fun, self-aware, and surprisingly earnest. Audiences who saw it gave it an 81% approval rating, actually higher than the original 78%. The people who showed up mostly enjoyed it. The problem is not what the movie is. The problem is what it isn't. Because M3GAN 2.0 made a series of decisions that didn't just affect its quality. They affected whether audiences showed up at all. M3GAN 2.0 debuted to $10.2 million domestically on opening weekend. The original opened to $30 million. That's a drop of nearly 66% on day one. It never recovered. The film finished at $39 million worldwide against an estimated $25 million budget. By Hollywood math, you need roughly 2.5 times your budget just to break even, factoring the 50% theaterscape plus marketing. M3GAN 2.0 didn't come close. So why? There are 4 clear reasons. The genre swap no one asked for. The first M3GAN was intimate horror. The terror lived in domestic spaces. A bedroom, a workshop, a hallway. The doll was small. The fear was personal. That proximity is what made it so effective. M3GAN 2.0 abandoned all of that. It became a globe-trotting action thriller with government agencies and military installations. The scale exploded, and with it, the original scrappy singular tension evaporated completely. Jason Blum admitted it afterward, and his words are remarkably candid. He told podcaster Matthew Belloni, "We all thought M3GAN was like Superman. We could do anything with her. We could change genres, put her in summer, make her look different, turn her from the bad guy into the good guy." Then came the real verdict. "We've gone over our skis too far. We got too excited by M3GAN, and she didn't work." That's a producer confessing they treated a very specific cultural moment like a blank canvas for anything. The timing was brutal. The original had the January window almost to itself. Audiences didn't have many other choices. M3GAN 2.0 opened in late June, the heart of summer blockbuster season. That same week, audiences were choosing between How to Train Your Dragon, Elio, and 28 Years Later. The following weekend, Jurassic World Rebirth opened to $92 million. The sequel was in 4th place on opening weekend. By mid-July, it had vanished from the top 10 entirely. The critical reception killed the momentum. A 93% Rotten Tomatoes score is contagious. People share it. They recommend the movie. Word of mouth becomes self-sustaining. M3GAN 2.0 opened to 57%, technically rotten. For a sequel riding on certified fresh goodwill, that perception gap is devastating. Everyone on the fence decided to wait. The viral magic couldn't be recreated. Nobody planned for the dance to generate 1.3 billion TikTok views. It happened because the scene was genuinely, beautifully strange, and strange things don't respond well to being engineered a second time. M3GAN 2.0's marketing leaned on existing camp. The one-liners, the attitude, the sass, fun promotion, but it never ignited a new conversation. The surprise was already gone. And then the real world crept in. When M3GAN first appeared, AI felt like science fiction, dark but fantastical enough to be funny. By 2025, that descent had collapsed. AI was everywhere, in headlines, in job losses, in congressional hearings. M3GAN 2.0 even has a subplot where Gamma testifies before Congress about AI regulation. That's not satire anymore. That's just Tuesday. The horror had become real life, and the film had nowhere to stand. The theatrical run was over, but the story wasn't, because something unexpected happened once the movie moved to streaming. M3GAN 2.0 landed on Netflix on January 26, 2026. Within 2 days, it was #1 on Netflix's domestic charts. It notched 5 million views and 10 million hours watched in its first reporting week. On Sky Showtime, the streaming platform covering much of Europe, it topped the charts entirely. By early February, it had reached #1 in at least 20 countries around the world. A movie nobody went to see in theaters became a global streaming phenomenon almost instantly. And that tells us something important. M3GAN 2.0 didn't fail because it was bad. It failed because it was the wrong movie in the wrong season, carrying the wrong expectations at the wrong cultural moment for its genre. On Netflix, none of that friction exists. No opening weekend, no competing blockbuster across the hall, no ticket price to justify. You'll click play and the film's genuine strengths, its energy, its humor, its chaos, get to land without obstruction. That B+ cinema score from the theatrical run makes sense now. The people who showed up liked it. There just weren't enough of them. The spin-off Soulmate, originally set for January 2026, was pulled from Universal's release calendar after the box office collapse. But with M3GAN now reaching #1 in 20 countries, there's renewed conversation about its future. Blumhouse is reportedly seeking a new distributor. A streaming deal, possibly with Netflix itself, seems increasingly plausible. The franchise isn't dead. It just needed a different door. Here's what M3GAN 2.0 story really is. Underneath all the numbers, it's the story of a creative team that believed so deeply in what they had, they forgot what made it work. M3GAN worked because it was contained, specific, and genuinely fresh. It arrived at exactly the right cultural temperature. Funny enough to share, scary enough to feel, satirical enough to make you feel smart for watching. And it worked because nobody expected it to. The sequel inherited all of that goodwill and spent it trying to become something much larger, more expansive, more franchise-ready. And in doing so, it stripped away the intimacy that made people fall in love with M3GAN in the first place. There's a version of this sequel that gets made for $15 million, drops in October during horror, is committed to the domestic dread that made the original land so hard. That movie probably delivers. Instead, the studio dreamed bigger, and the audience wasn't ready to go where that dream led. But M3GAN is still alive. She's sitting at the top of streaming charts. She's generating a conversation again, months after theaters moved on. Whether that becomes a third film, a revived spin-off, or a cult classic on loop is still being written. But she's proven twice now that she finds her audience eventually. She always does. If this breakdown changed how you see M3GAN 2.0 or confirmed everything you already suspected, drop it in the comments. It's one of the most fascinating family stories of 2025, and the streaming arc makes it even richer. If you're into deep dives like this, box office autopsies, franchise misfires, the movies that worked and the sequels that didn't, subscribe. New video every week. I'll see you in the next